All right, today we are jumping into one of the most famous sentences ever written. We're going to explore this really fascinating argument, and while it's not exactly a mainstream view, it suggests there's a profound message hidden inside the very first word of the Bible.
So here's the big question that kicks this whole thing off. What if the familiar opening of Genesis holds a secret? A secret that could completely reframe the entire creation story. I know, it's a pretty bold claim, and our job here is to unpack the evidence behind it piece by piece.
Think of this as a kind of linguistic detective journey. We're going to be looking at how one single word in the original Hebrew, when you look at it through the lens of other ancient texts, might just unlock a whole new layer of meaning.
Okay, let's start on common ground. We all know this one, right? Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This translation has been the standard reading for centuries. It's our starting point.
But here's the twist in the interpretation we're exploring today. The real action, the real secret, isn't spread out across the whole sentence. No, it's all concentrated, laser-focused on that single opening word.
So, to really wrap our heads around this argument, we have to peel back the English translation and go right to the original language. This is where the real investigation begins.
In Hebrew, the first word of the Bible is Bereshit, and it's this one powerful word that, according to this school of thought, holds the key to the whole thing.
Now you look it up, and pretty much everyone agrees Bereshit means in the beginning. That's the standard definition. But, and this is a big but, what if the word itself can be deconstructed? What if you can take it apart?
So, the source material breaks the word into two pieces. The first part, be, is a simple little preposition. It can mean in, with, or even through. The second part is Reshit, and this is where it gets really interesting. See, Reshit doesn't just mean beginning, like a point in time. It can also mean the first fruits, or the chief part of something.
This really begs the question, right? To get the full meaning of Bereshit, we have to understand what the ancient writers meant by the specific noun, Reshit. Was it just about a moment in time, or could it possibly be referring to something, or maybe even someone?
Well, to figure that out, the argument tells us we need to look elsewhere in the Old Testament. Where else does this specific word, Reshit, show up and how is it used? And the answer, maybe a little surprisingly, is in the book of Proverbs.
And boom, here it is. In Proverbs chapter 8, there's this character called Wisdom, who's personified, who's speaking. And Wisdom says that God possessed them as the Reshit of his work. All of a sudden, Reshit isn't just a time, it's identified with an actual entity, wisdom.
And that, of course, is the million-dollar question. If Reshit is wisdom, then who or what is this wisdom? For that connection, our source material takes us right out of the Old Testament and straight into the New.
And here you can see how the argument just clicks into place. In the Old Testament, wisdom is called the Reshit, and then in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul comes right out and calls Christ the wisdom of God. Now, this isn't just some casual comparison. For early theologians, this was a deep, direct link. They argued that Christ is the personification of that divine wisdom from Proverbs.
Okay, so we've gathered all our clues, we've followed the trail, let's assemble the pieces of this puzzle and see what kind of picture it makes.
So just follow the logic here. If Bereshit means in, and Reshit is identified with wisdom, and wisdom is theologically identified with Christ, well, then the word Bereshit could be translated not as in the beginning, but as in Christ.
I mean, just look at the difference here. The contrast between these two readings is just stark. On one side, you have the familiar translation that's setting a scene in time. And on the other, you have this proposed reading that establishes a completely different foundation for creation. The meaning just shifts dramatically. And so we get to the final revelation of this whole argument. The very first verse of the Bible could be read as, "In Christ God created the heavens and the earth." It's pretty profound, a truly startling way to look at it.
So what's the big deal? Beyond being a clever linguistic puzzle, why does this particular interpretation carry so much weight for the people who hold to it?
Well, the primary significance is theological. It's huge. It frames the entire biblical story around Christ from the absolute get-go. Instead of showing up thousands of years later, this reading suggests his presence and his purpose are literally encoded into the very first word of the creation story itself. And that really leaves us with a provocative thought. Whether you find this interpretation compelling or not, it just powerfully shows how layered and complex these ancient texts can be. It forces you to wonder, what other profound connections might be out there, hidden in plain sight? just waiting for someone to find the right key.